Wow, that's fantastic. Let's bring in our guest, David Schur, here to the Awake Nation. How do you like your intro, David?
Wow. It's interesting because when you guys have that break before with the cityscape and all of that,
Yeah.
I usually get bored and it's just like, but that is mesmerizing to watch. But this, I love the festivity, the Christmas thing is just amazing. But the only thing that I don't like is that it's off of that documentary. And the documentary, we had filmed 70 hours in a matter of 40 days. And that was at the very end of that documentary. We filmed it in a cemetery right up from my house in Council Bluffs. And as you can see, I am sweating like a pig. And I was so hot during that interview. But no, the intro was great. It's
the words and what you said, the information is what's very, very important. You're very knowledgeable on the subject. We had discussed maybe what to talk about today, and I've had some requests from people because apparently Norine Gosh is now back in the news, and you had said, I just started doing videos about her, and now she's back in the news. Can you tell us why?
2 days, and it was a little blip. But I am in the process of busting apart the satanic Nazi pedophile ring. They busted part of it in September in New York, but Doug Mesner and his Satanic Temple, my sights are right on him because he's involved. It's the whole reason why they just did an article that satanic after-school daycare programs.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I have that in my PowerPoint. I haven't gotten to it. Can you tell our audience who Norine Gosh is?
Norine Gosh is the mother of an abducted boy named Johnny Gosh. Johnny Gosh was abducted in West Des Moines, Iowa. And Norine Gosh is the mother who has a book out, who has come out with some really outlandish claims. Like her abducted son came back as an adult and visited her. And just all kinds of, my experience with Norine Gosh is when I first got involved with trying to get my family investigated, I went to the Nebraska State Patrolman, John Pankinen, and demanded that he take my DNA because there was an abducted boy named Ricky Chaddick. And Ricky Chaddick was seen with a man and a woman. And how many serial killer couples can there be? And I knew my dad and my stepmom were one. So I demanded to get my DNA. Well, during that time that I did that, all of a sudden, True Pankinen, John Pankinen's sister, ingratiated herself in both mine and my sister Kathy's lives. And so all of a sudden we had the cold case. So during this time, I'm really going into Franklin and trying to get it investigated. I was asking questions. And I won't use names because I don't want anyone in trouble, but Rachel B.
Okay.
I know her last name, but Rachel B. invited me, came and sought me out, and brought me into a site called Franklin Files, franklinfiles.net. And it was all things Franklin Files and Johnny Gosh. Because what happened was that all of the stuff that is known in Omaha, Franklin credit with the Satanism and the abductions and the snuff films being filmed in the Hollywood bar in the basement and all of that, that was all starting to come out. So when the abduction of Johnny Gosh happened, everything around Franklin became about Johnny Gosh and an abduction that happened in another state, which was Johnny Gosh. And Norine Gosh, I found, was to be the gatekeeper. When they brought me into Franklin Files, they were super nice to me. Oh my God, they were just so supportive and so friendly for about 3 months. About maybe 4 months, but 3 months, around 4 months. And then they turned, and they were like a pack of rabid hyenas, and came at me. Norine Gosh was on this website, and I actually met Norine Gosh. When I first got involved with this, I kept trying to reach out to John DeCamp over and over and over. And John DeCamp would never answer my phone calls. He would never get a hold of me. And when I got a hold of Ernie Chambers, he was a congressman at the time. He told me, dude, stop what you're doing, because if you don't, they're going to put you in a psych ward, drug you up, and throw you off a roof.
But yeah,
And,
that's pretty much the protocol.
Yeah. And so John DeCamp wouldn't reach out to me. Well, then I got on Franklin Files, and Norine wanted to meet me. And Norine came down with some guy. I don't know who she was with, because he was really, I mean, at the time it was nobody.
Her husband might have been her handler too. And I don't know if they put her on any drugs, David.
Well, John DeCamp came with her. Suddenly, John DeCamp not only wanted to meet me, but he wanted to buy me lunch. And so he showed up. I only met Norine once. She had pictures of Mike Lucchino, asked me if I knew Mike Lucchino. Yes, I knew Mike Lucchino. But the story about Johnny Gosh is a gatekeeper story. It's false. The whole thing about it is that Paul Bonacci, if you listen to my interview with Michael Brunell, and that's on YouTube, Michael Brunell was sitting right beside Troy Bonner's brother when they shot Troy Bonner's brother in the head. And so he was sitting right beside. And so we were able to talk about all things.
Who Michael Brunell is, David.
Michael Brunell was just a friend of Troy Bonner's brother. They murdered Troy Bonner's brother to shut Troy Bonner up, because Troy Bonner and Paul Bonacci, who is directly connected to Johnny Gosh, and Alicia Owen were all involved together in the 80s. They were the ones that went to court. And Paul Bonacci had this ridiculous act. DID does not work the way he was reacting. It was like Primal Fear, only not as good as Edward Norton's. And what they did, I know that Troy Bonner, whose brother was sitting right next to Michael Brunell, Troy Bonner was a bear boy. In Franklin, with all of the child trafficking and all of that, 2 men were associated with it, but they were not by far the only 2 men involved. Alan Bear and Larry King. These are the 2 names. If you look into Franklin credit, those names will come out predominantly the most. Troy Bonner was a bear boy. What they did was Alicia Owen was pregnant at the time with Chief of Police Omaha Robert Wadman, the Omaha Chief of Police. And she was pregnant with his baby at the time, and she was 15. And so they sent Troy Bonner and Paul Bonacci and surrounded Alicia Owen and contained her. Troy Bonner was just a liar. Paul Bonacci came out of nowhere. Nobody even knows where Paul Bonacci came from. Now he's associated with all things Johnny Gosh. And their hope is, if you look into Franklin and you look at Franklin, then you'll go to the Johnny Gosh case, and it diverts your gaze to a case that was in West Des Moines. And for 41 years, that woman has been coming out saying, oh, I have information. I have information that will break this case. Yeah, she does have information that can break the case. Like the 3 brothers she talks about, those were the Aquasino brothers. They lived right across the street from my family's house. The Aquasino brothers and everything that was involved with Johnny Gosh, the Aquasino brothers are my older brothers and sisters' age. The youngest is 12 and a half years older than me.
Did you know them?
What?
Did you know them?
I didn't. I knew the Aquasino brothers because they were waiters in the French Cafe down in the Old Market.
Wow.
And the Underground, which is a bar that was under the French Cafe, was the place where a lot of the child trafficking was going on.
I have to go get my dog, but keep going.
And so Norine knows about all of she knows about the brothers. She knows about in dealing with Norine Gosh, she was really friendly, and then she turned out to be a snake. She tried to just destroy me. They all did. So did Paul Bonacci. Paul Bonacci, who was so traumatized that he had multiple personalities, and now he mows these people's lawns because that's what he does in Omaha. He's a lawn service dude, and he works for the very people that supposedly molested him. And this whole DID, his whole DID got solved 5 times seeing a priest. What Johnny Gosh did was it made
his DID got resolved.
Dissociative identity disorder, which is multiple personality disorder.
Yes.
So Paul Bonacci supposedly had multiple personality disorder.
Yes.
And it was his testimony and Troy Bonner's testimony that got the grand jury to call it a great hoax. Never said who was behind the hoax, but
they said Franklin was a hoax?
Yeah, that's exactly. The grand jury said Franklin was a hoax. And now they have a hold of this so tight. John DeCamp was a bad guy. He was a bad guy. He worked for the bad guys.
Yes, and also, you know that John Walsh worked with Norine Gosh. I just want to let people know that we have a short time here, but David Schurter is going to be joining the Dark Outpost. So he will be able to explain some of these things a little bit more in depth. I'm sorry, David, go on.
Norine Gosh is connected to all of these people who have made this go away. John Walsh, perfect example. And so Norine, right now I'm trying to expose a satanic Nazi pedophile ring. And I've been doing a lot of work on my YouTube station, David Schurter 1. Anyone who wants to go there, you can see a lot of the stuff because I am singling things out. I made a mention. That's not just making mention of Norine Gosh, and then 2 days later being her on CNN is not the only coincidence that's happened. The Satanic Temple just had this weird Baphomet statue at the Iowa.
Tell us about that.
The Satanic Temple this year decided to put up a Baphomet statue in the Capitol along with all of the nativity scenes and the Christmas scenes. And it's caused quite the chaos, but people do not realize that Iowa is full of small towns. There's no metropolises here, and everybody talks. And so in Iowa, I'm making a lot of headway because I'm trying to bust a satanic Nazi pedophile ring and a meth ring that is involved with my sheriff. And so I'm making quite the headwaves around here. And they're trying to do anything they can to distract. What?
Is that why they tried to blow you up?
Oh, they tried. I didn't even know about the meth ring before that. But yeah, it's been this exposure of trying to expose Doug Mesner and the Satanic Temple for being involved in really bad things. Just not with kids, but really bad things. And they were after me in Seattle. When I was in Washington, I was about 20 miles away from Seattle. I was in Algona. When I moved from Algona to Earling, Iowa, they followed me. And I was there for a couple years. But my sister had just bought the house on the corner that was across the street from the gas station that had been there for 40 years.
Wow.
And I lived in the old funeral home that was right across the street on the other side of the street up a hill that I overlooked the gas station.
You lived in an old funeral home?
I did. There were no bodies. It was just, it was where they had the funerals.
Okay.
Actual bodies, everything was done downtown.
Like 6 feet under, like in the...
Yeah. And I didn't even know it. I bought this house sight unseen. And when I moved to Earling, it wasn't until Fiona Barnett from Australia called and told me that Earling's claim to fame was that it is the place where the last sanctioned Catholic exorcism has ever taken place in the United States. And I had no clue that's where I was going. I would have never moved there. Never. It was the most awful place. But yeah, you can go check out my blog, davidschurter.com, and just in the search bar, type Erling gas station explosion and all of the coincidences. They were trying to shut me up. They thought they had 2 for 1. Because had the wall fallen down where the first bomb was, the 300 plus pound pieces of debris that ended up 9 blocks in a field on the other side of town would have directly hit me and my sister's house. And I do not think that it was a coincidence that I didn't hear the first blast, because I had just gotten in the shower and put my head under the water when the first blast hit. I didn't even hear the first blast. And it supposedly was bigger than the second one. And there's a video there. But they've been trying to shut me down because they don't want all of this exposed. And so now you have Norine Gosh, who I am on record doing battle with, publicly standing against. And I just made a little blurb about her and her kid, Johnny Gosh, 2 days before. And then the next thing I know, she's on CNN, being featured on CNN for no reason. Johnny Gosh was abducted in September. It wasn't his birthday. There was no reason to have this article. But 2 days later, there's an article all over CNN about Norine Gosh. And it's the same regurgitated crap. A friend of mine actually has looked into Johnny Gosh a lot. That's why she kind of sought me out. Because people who have gone into Johnny Gosh and they know that there's problems there ultimately end up seeking me out, because that's what I found. It's just that I'm way more open about it. And she told me that there's just been all kinds of activity. And I guess the site of Johnny Gosh on Facebook kind of adopted the same site, Hoaxstead Research, in the UK, that were trying to cover up the Hampstead case. And I was fighting with them in the UK, and they referred to me as he who must not be named.
What? Like Voldemort?
Like I'm Voldemort.
Like from Harry Potter?
Johnny Gosh, that Facebook thing, I guess they adopted the same thing. But now they're all running around in circles, because I'm about ready to bust this wide open.
Did you know that in this CNN, which I refer to as CNN as the Communist News Network article, it states the West Des Moines Police Department declined to release its full investigative file because the Gosh case is still an active investigation involving state and federal authorities, and declined to make any current investigators available for an interview. It also declined to answer my extensive list of questions about the case, but the agency did send me a statement which read in part, "We understand how deeply this case has affected the family, the community, law enforcement officials, and the nation. This case will remain open, and we won't stop investigating to have closure and answers as to what happened to Johnny Gosh." What do you think happened to him?
See, they have that focused, and they have you all focused on that. And so when you're focused on Johnny Gosh, you don't look at cases like Todd Beckett. Todd Beckett was a 13-year-old who was abducted in the old market, which is where all the child trafficking was going on in the 80s. When the family went to the police told him, "Oh no, he's a runaway. He's a runaway." Right. So the family, Todd Beckett's family, who was a poor family in Council Bluffs, hired a private investigator, Danny Whelan. And so Danny Whelan went and sought him out and found him with his abductor in Oregon being molested in a hotel room. When they busted in, he was molesting Todd Beckett. But they have you, so you don't focus on all the child trafficking that was going on in the old market, which was where Boys Town is in Omaha, Nebraska. And they were shipping boys down to the old market in the 80s every Saturday, because the old market was set up as a kid's paradise, a Godfather's Pizza and an arcade and all kinds of stuff that drew in kids. It's not like that anymore, but that's the way it was. And so the child abductions and all of the stuff that was going on, and the kids that disappeared, that they all say, oh, it was a runaway. It was a runaway. It was a runaway. Except for kids like Ricky Chaddick, who they found his body, and he was displayed the exact same way the Oakland Four in Michigan were displayed. But the thing about the Oakland Four in Michigan is that that all happened at a time that 10 years before Franklin came out. Stuff about Omaha was starting to come out 10 years earlier. And then all of a sudden, the next thing you had was the four that were ritually murdered in Michigan, the Oakland Four. My dad, my family basically owned Cassopolis, Michigan for a long time. And so we were from Michigan. My dad was a pilot, had a plane, flew everywhere. And so they did the same thing with the Oakland Four that they did with Johnny Gosh. Something was coming out in Omaha, and they distracted it. First, it was the Oakland Four. And everyone was focused for a long time on the four ritually abused kids that were found murdered in Michigan. And then Franklin came out in the 80s and 90s. And then suddenly we had Johnny Gosh, a case that didn't happen in Omaha. It happened in West Des Moines. Didn't have anything to do with Omaha, except if you listen to Paul Bonacci and John DeCamp. And his book was lacking. And Nick Bryant, yes, wrote a book. Do you know that I made that man cry on the phone? Because he and I had an argument on the phone, and I asked him, did you say what was going on in Hummel Park? Did you talk about the kids that were being ritually murdered in Hummel Park? Did you talk about Forest Lawn and all of the stuff that was going on in Forest Lawn? Did you talk about the Old Market where the kids were being abducted? Did you talk about the Hollywood Bar where they were filming snuff films? Did you talk about, it was the Hollywood Bar, and then the bar up above Stars that was right across the street from the police station, where the dude who supposedly, where Norine has gone on and on and on, that he abducted it, he was the manager at Stars Bar, a gay bar right across the street from the police station. And I know that because he was my boss when I worked at Stars, when I was 19. And so none of this got brought up. And I told him, dude, you don't bring anything new to the table. You're just regurgitating John DeCamp's book. Right. That's all you're doing. And he has interviews. He has a YouTube station. That's how I found out from Alicia Owen. He interviewed Alicia Owen. And that is how I found out that John Pankinen, the cold case dude that made my case with Ricky Chaddick go away, who sent his sister True into both my sisters and my life, he was the cop that actually made Franklin go away, who was the one after Alicia Owen. And I didn't know any of that until I listened to Alicia Owen talk about it. And I was just like, oh my God. So John Pankinen, who was the cold case dude for the Nebraska State Patrol, he was the one who was, how many kids has that guy made the investigations all go away?
Yes.
Ricky Chaddick is still and Ricky Chaddick, his family vacationed at the same lake my family vacationed at in Minnesota.
David. We're actually out of time right now, but I want to remind people that David will be featuring on the Dark Outpost. So that is a subscription based, one of our subscription based programs, and the funding, partial of the funding goes to fight sex trafficking. David Schurter, how can people find you and how can they help you and contribute to your work?
David Schurter 1 is my YouTube. There's 2 YouTube stations. They're both mine, but I lost the one I'm working on now 5 years ago, and I just got a hold of it this last year. So I've started posting on that, but both of them are mine. Both of them have stuff on the investigations.
How were you able to get it back?
What?
How were you able to get your channel back?
I went on to Google after 5 years, and it took a month. I had to fill out all of this stuff, and then they told me, if you're still, we'll send a thing to this email address in a month, and if you click on it, you can have it back. So I clicked it on, and I got it back. God has been behind all of this. I mean, right now, my life is providence. It's just complete providence. Anybody who wants to help me financially, because I'm starting to write a second book after Rabbit Hole, can find me on PayPal and Venmo. Both are just my name, D, and then Shurter, Shurter. The D and the S are capitalized. I don't know if that makes a difference, but they are killing me financially. They are so on top of me right now that it's not funny. So any help would be great because I am sinking. Every time I go around and try to get something where I'm making cash, they try to set me up or destroy me.
That is the protocol. That's what they do to all whistleblowers. David, I want to thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
That you've written, and for the work that you're doing now, and for the new book that you're going to be working on. I really appreciate it. And we will see you in 2 weeks. And then also we'll see you before that, because we're going to pre-record some more rabbit holes with you on the Dark Outpost.
Okay. Looking forward to it.
Thank you, David. We appreciate you very much.
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas. Okay. David Shurter here on the Awake Nation. Let us now bring in our next guest, Kate Shemirani.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good. I'm glad that you showed, because my math skills are pretty deficient.